Hey guys, and welcome to a brand new module on SwiftUI. In this module, we're going to be exploring what exactly is SwiftUI, what does it do, and how can we use it to build iOS apps. Now, at the WWDC 2019, one of the most exciting announcements that came out was SwiftUI. Now, SwiftUI is Apple's brand new UI framework built with declarative Swift code. Now, you might be wondering, what does all of that mean? Well, this is Apple's attempt to make it easier for beginners to get into iOS development through a whole bunch of cool features, such as drag and drop code creation. Let me demo. So, for example, using SwiftUI, you can simply go into the object library, drag in a button or a text element, and then simply drop it onto the canvas, and it will automatically write the necessary code. Now, not only is that limited to components such as text and buttons, but you can also drag on attributes, such as, for example, if we wanted to change the font of our text, we just drag and drop it onto the text. Or if we want to change the font weight, and you can see that the preview canvas on the right is automatically updating to show our code changes as and when they're made. Now, SwiftUI being a UI framework, one of its main goals was to make layouts much easier in iOS apps. And we can do that through something called vertical, horizontal, and the Z-axis stack. So, for example, you've already seen that we can simply drag on elements and drop them either below to create a vertical stack or next to other elements to create a horizontal stack. And using these stacks, we can create pretty complex designs just through the use of these vertical and horizontal, almost like columns and rows, if you will. And a lot of this has inspirations from the web design world, where we're often using tools like Bootstrap or other UI frameworks to be able to easily build out a complex and adaptive user interface. So in this case, I'm actually going to use a Z stack to stack elements on top of each other. So right now I've got a purple background, and then I'm going to add a circle onto my stack, and it's going to go straight on top. And then I'm going to add a button, which is also going to go on top in the Z-axis. So I've now got 3 layers of a purple background, a black circle, and a button right at the top. And you can see that the order is determined by which order these elements go into the Z stack from top to bottom. Now, by creating Swift code while we're designing our UI, it means that the user interfaces that we build become highly reusable. So, for example, here I've built a really simple layout of a horizontal stack which has an image of a book, and I've sized it and changed its color. And then I've got a vertical stack inside the horizontal stack, which has a title text as well as a sort of smaller author text. And I've arranged and added the attributes that I wanted to set up this particular appearance. Now, if I wanted to reuse this component that I've designed, all I have to do is simply command click on the H stack, and I can extract this as a subview. I can give that view a name, and now I can add properties to that view to be able to set various components to use those properties. And when I initialize a new book view, I can pass in a dynamic title. So now if I wanted to build a bunch of these book views, I can just initialize a brand new book view, pass in the properties that are changeable or dynamic, and I end up with a whole bunch of these book views all stacked together on my screen. And I can go even one step further and change my VStack into a list view just by renaming it a list. And now all the components inside the list are going to be stacked into a table view. I can also change that into a form, which creates a group sort of like interface. And just by changing these different components around and reusing these views that I've created, I can create incredibly complex components, and I can simply copy and paste this code to be reused anywhere else where it's needed. Now, you've already seen that we can use the canvas preview to see as we make changes. For example, when we drag on new components, we can see these changes happen pretty much live on screen. And that happens when I'm dragging components onto the canvas or as I'm typing code in my content view. But what you might not know is that there's actually a live preview mode where once I'm done with my layouts, so in this case, I've got a VStack that's inside a scroll view. So I've made it scrollable, and I've got a text component, a text field, a stepper, and a picker. So all of those components are now live and in my preview. Without having to run the app or use a simulator or use a device, I can already start testing out these components and the layouts as if it was running in a real device. Now, finally, one of the biggest reasons why Apple came out with SwiftUI is to make it easier to build cross-platform user interfaces. Now, when I say cross-platform, I don't mean fully cross-platform like across iOS or Android, but across the Apple platform. So this means that you can build the same app, say for Watch or for Mac, and still use all of these tools and SwiftUI to see how they look and create their layouts and reuse some of those subviews that you've created for your apps across different platforms. Now, not only is the UI more reusable across different Apple platforms, they've actually made it a lot easier for us to build our iOS apps, say for iPhone or iPad, and turn it straight into a Mac app through something called Project Catalyst. Now, Project Catalyst basically allows us to build an iOS app like the demo that I created just now, and simply go into the settings and check the Mac checkbox so that it also works on Mac. And then, of course, you need an Apple developer account to set up. And then if you hit run, your app will be run straight onto the Mac app, and you will be able to see it as a separate application running on your Mac. So now that we've seen all the capabilities of SwiftUI, let's get some hands-on practice and build an app using SwiftUI ourselves. Now, before we proceed, you first have to make sure that you are running macOS Catalina version 10.5 or above, ideally the latest version that you can get on the App Store. And on top of that, you will need the latest version of Xcode. So at minimum, it's going to be 11.0. The other thing to remember is that the apps built with SwiftUI can only run on a device that's running iOS 13. And the only devices that can actually update to iOS 13 are iPhones 6S or later, as well as the iPhone SE. And on iPad, it's the iPad Air 2 or later, or the latest iPad Mini 4. So this does mean that anybody with an older phone or who haven't updated to iOS 13 would not be able to download an app that's actually made with SwiftUI. So at the moment, SwiftUI is very much in sort of early adopter experimentation phase. And for the next 2 or 3 years, we're not going to see any serious apps built with it. But there's no better time to get a head start on everybody and have a play around with SwiftUI.